Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today's case left me shaken to my core when I first read about it because it's just horrifying. I mean, it left an entire community haunted. Today we're going to be talking about the Worley family and the tragic events that took place after a seemingly harmless Reddit post asking for advice went viral. I can't imagine what it must have been like to watch this case unfold in real time because no one could have predicted that their advice would lead to cold-blooded murder. Let's go back to where this all started, which was on Reddit. If you don't know what Reddit is, it's basically a conversation/discussion platform. And on the evening of October 28th, 2016, a Reddit user by the name of JasonInHell made a post on the relationship advice subreddit asking for advice after finding out that his wife had been cheating on him. The post was titled, "I'm having a hard time coping with my wife having cheated on me with our neighbor." And in this post, he outlines how everything unfolded between him and his wife. His story gained serious attention online, and you'll see why in a second when we read through it, but little did anyone know what a heinous crime would occur as a result of this Reddit discussion. I'm going to read through the whole post with you guys because I think it's important in understanding what this family was going through. So the post read, "So, to go back to the beginning, I had just taken on a new project and new responsibilities at work. I was working a lot of hours and was noticeably stressed. It was in May of 2015 that I noticed that she had added a password to her phone. When confronted about it, she told me it was because she was planning my Father's Day present and didn't want me to ruin the surprise. About a week later, she came to me and told me she felt guilty keeping a big secret from me and told me that she was having our neighbor, a contractor, build a home office for me as my present. It struck me as odd, as in our 6 years together, she had never said she felt guilty about anything and always insists that she never regrets anything in her life. Time goes on, her phone is still password protected and things don't feel right. I see her using her phone and smiling to herself more and more often. But when I ask her what she's doing, she says nothing and puts her phone away. So one morning, I wait for her to get in the shower and I grab her phone before it requires the password. I go through her messages and find that she's texting the neighbor. I'm all covered in frosting. You want to lick it off? There were no other messages to the neighbor, but I found out later that was because she had set up her phone to delete messages after a certain amount of time. I felt uncomfortable with it, but I knew she had a perverted sense of humor and I thought she would never do anything to hurt me. More time goes by and the neighbor is spending more and more time at our house, but the office is being completed slower and slower. I can't help but worry that something isn't right, so I start checking her location using Google Timeline. It was at this point that I realized that there are large gaps in her GPS history because she was turning off her phone's GPS. Fast forward to July, and at this point, the paranoia is driving me nuts. So I tell her I need to install a new antivirus on her phone. While she has it unlocked for me, I install anti-theft software so I can remotely turn the GPS back on and set up AT&T Message Backup and Restore so I can read all of her text messages from that point on my computer. The next day, my mother asked to spend time with my 2 kids, so my wife drops them off with her and has the day to herself. I watch my wife's activity from work as she spends the day trying to meet up with the neighbor, but is unsuccessful because he is busy with another job site. That night, we get the kids back from my mom's house and we go out to dinner with the neighbor, his girlfriend, and his son. My wife and his girlfriend are having a good time drinking, laughing, and just joking around. His girlfriend mentions that she would like to see Magic Mike. I say it's a good idea and that I'll watch the kids so my wife and her can go. So my wife and her go, and the neighbor and I go back to my house so the kids can play video games together. The kids are back in my son's room playing games, and the neighbor is sitting across from me on the other couch. It is at this point that my wife starts texting him. She's describing sex acts she would like to perform with him, and he is reciprocating. She tells him to check his Snapchat, and at the same time, I get a Snapchat from her too, and it's an explicit photo of herself in a bathroom stall. They keep talking, trying to figure out when they can meet up and have sex. They decide on Monday morning after I go to work. So in my head, I already plan to pretend to leave and circle back to catch them. But then they tell each other they love each other, and it's all I can do not to leap off the couch and knock him out. But I contain myself and continue reading the conversation unfolding in front of me. Then he tells her, "You're my girl now," to which she replies, "Always have been," ending in him writing, "and always will be." My wife and the neighbor's girlfriend return from the movie, and I ask them politely to sit down. I then ask the kids to stay in my son's room and shut the door. I return to the living room and confront my wife and neighbor. I say, "So you two love each other, huh?" My wife goes into full-blown denial mode, and the neighbor's girlfriend starts smacking him. I ask my wife if she's been texting him. She says no. So I show her the text messages. She admits to it, but says it was the first time it had gone that far. I ask my wife if she had sent him pictures. She says no. So I show her the picture. She admits it, but says it was the first time. I ask her if she's having sex with him, and she says no. Because I didn't wait to catch them having sex together, I didn't have evidence to prove her wrong, so that one stayed unresolved. I tell her that I'm leaving her. She tells me that she'll make sure I never see my kids again if I do. She planned on using the fact that I had attempted suicide in high school to prove me unfit to have the children. She continues to say that it was my fault for being so busy with work and stressed out that she just wanted someone she could talk to. Then she gives me an ultimatum to decide what I'm going to do, or she will decide for me. The neighbor's girlfriend starts defending the two of them, saying that it couldn't have been that serious if they weren't having sex and that my wife and I are too perfect together to let this break us up. The neighbors go home, and my wife and I argue for the rest of the night about what we're going to do. We go to bed separately, not having resolved anything. We keep going back and forth on the subject all weekend and finally settle on we're going to separate temporarily while we figure out what we want. I was going to stay in the house, and she was going to take the kids and go to her mom's house. That Monday, I go to work, and I get a text from her in the middle of a meeting with my bosses stating that she had explained things to our kids, but that they were upset and I need to explain it to them also. I get home from work to find my kids crying. She had told them that mommy had to move out because dad was mad at her. When my son wanted to stay with me, she told him that he can't. My son put it together that if mommy has to move out because I'm mad at her and he has to move out, then I must have been mad at him too. My daughter was crying because my son was. I don't think she was old enough to understand what was happening. It was at that moment that I realized she was going to drag the kids through hell if I left her, so I swallowed my feelings and begged her to stay. She agreed and insisted that I apologize to our neighbor since we were still going to need to hang out with them because our sons are good friends. I hate it, but I do it anyway. We still hang out with them from time to time, and they come to our various birthday and holiday parties. But I'd do anything for my kids, and I behave civil every time. Things die down for a while. I still think about it constantly. I worry how I can keep from making her so unhappy that she cheats on me again. Then almost a year from the original incident, around Father's Day again, she sent him pictures again. She claims it was an accident and that she meant to send them to me instead. I don't fully believe her, but I move on anyway. Things have been quiet on that front for about 4 months now, but I still think about it constantly. This is going to sound stupid, but I feel like I have part of my brain that I can't shut off, that is always thinking. I used to use it to solve programming problems, and it made me very good at my job. But ever since this incident, the only thing it thinks about is her and him and if I did the right thing. My job performance has suffered, and I feel like I haven't gotten sleep in months. I'm afraid that after this much time, and the fact that I begged her to stay, that to say I want a divorce now would only make her more vindictive towards my children and I. I just feel like I have put myself so deep into a hole that I can never get back out. I haven't really talked to anyone about this. I didn't want to talk to my mom about it because I felt she would treat my wife differently, and I didn't need the two fighting any more than they already do. I tried talking to one friend about it, but his advice was to put my trust in God, but that was not much solace for me as I am an atheist. So I have no clue what to do with my feelings or how to move on from this. So, wow, this sounds just awful. We have this man who not only got cheated on, which is painful enough, he also got blamed for it and then is forced to stay in the marriage. Unsurprisingly, his story triggered a massive response from the Reddit community because I think people just felt bad for him, and they were also shocked at what a psycho bitch his wife was. An overwhelming amount of Redditors advised him to just get a lawyer and get a divorce, and that staying in a marriage because of the kids never works out. I'm sure at the time it was hard for him to face, but it seems that he soon realized that his situation wasn't going to get any better because 4 days later he posted an update called "I'm taking your advice." Instead of trying to fix something she doesn't want to fix, she's refused counseling several times in the past before this even happened. I'm going to get myself and my kids out. I meet with an attorney next week. Thank you everyone for helping me see how far I had my head up my ass. Redditors responded with support and best wishes and told him that he was doing the right thing for him and his children. It seemed like JasonInHell had a chance at happiness after the year of hell that he had just been through. But then the unthinkable happened when 2 weeks later, people started coming back to the post and linking news articles about a case in Indiana about a woman named Brandy Worley who had murdered her 2 children because her husband asked for a divorce. A lot of Redditors were speculating that the husband in these news stories could be JasonInHell from Reddit because the stories seem to have a lot of similarities. So now let's talk about the Worley family. This is the Worley family. On the left is Brandy, and she is with her husband Jason and their son Tyler and their daughter Charlie. The Worley family lived in Darlington, Indiana, which is a very small town about an hour away from Indianapolis. In 2016, Tyler was 7 years old and had just started the 1st grade, while Charlie was 3 years old and she was in preschool. And wow, were these kids ever cute. They were just adorable, happy, and healthy kids. Tyler was said to be a very athletic child, and he liked all the sports, but especially basketball, baseball, football, and soccer. Charlie was also a fan of sports like her big brother, especially basketball. She loved her preschool where she had lots of friends. She loved dancing and also loved going to the library for story time. Now, their parents, Jason and Brandy, had met in 2007 and married 2 years later in 2009. Jason was a hard-working software engineer, and Brandy, as far as we know, was a stay-at-home mom to their 2 young children. And from the outside, the Worley family looked like a really happy family, and Jason and Brandy looked like a happily married couple who loved their children. They were involved in their community, had lots of friends, they were close with their neighbors, and just overall looked like a really close-knit family until they would be tragically torn apart. Beneath the surface, Brandy and Jason's marriage was very, very toxic, which all started when Jason discovered that his wife was having an affair with their neighbor. We already know how all of that unfolded because, as you probably guessed by now, JasonInHell from Reddit and Jason Worley are the same person. As we know, the tension between them grew, and Jason ultimately reached his breaking point. Unable to handle the strain any longer, he officially filed for divorce on November 16, 2016, after seeking advice from Reddit. Little did he know that this decision would lead to unimaginable tragedy, which came to light when Brandy Worley placed a 911 call from their home in the early morning hours of November 17, 2016. And in this call, she admitted to the dispatcher that she had stabbed herself and murdered her 2 children.
Montgomery County 911, where's your emergency?
203 South Madison Street.
In what town?
Darlington.
Hey, what's going on there?
I just stabbed myself and I killed my 2 children.
You stabbed yourself and killed your 2 children?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what's your name?
Brandy Worley.
And where are the children at?
In my daughter's room on the floor.
In your daughter's room on the floor? Okay. And what caused you to do this today?
My husband wanted a divorce and wanted to take my kid. I won't let him have my kid.
Okay, and how old are your children?
7 and 3.
Okay. And where did you stab yourself at?
In the neck.
Okay, are you bleeding?
Yeah, there's blood everywhere.
Okay, and where are you at?
In my living room.
You're in your living room?
Mm-hmm.
And what are you feeling right now? Wait, are you tired? Are you where?
Yeah, I took a lot of Benadryl.
You took a lot of Benadryl?
Yeah.
Okay, and is there anyone else in the residence besides your children and you and your husband?
I called my mom.
You called your mom? What did she say?
I hang up and call 911 and she'd be here in a second.
And this is just awful. As you heard, Brandy is very calm. In fact, her voice is hauntingly calm. She's slurring her words, she's not hysterical, she doesn't sound remorseful, she's just emotionless. She explains to the operator that she took a lot of Benadryl, which that makes sense because she sounds drugged. Brandy also says that she called her mother and told her what she had done before she called 911. And while on the phone with the dispatcher, Brandy's mother shows up to their home and discovers a horrible crime scene. To do that to your mother and have her discover her grandchildren in such a horrific state, you must have to be such a very sick person. Brandy was also very upfront about her motive. She clearly states that she did this because she didn't want her husband to take her kids from her. It was determined that when all of this happened, Jason was actually sleeping in the basement that night, and he was unharmed, at least physically. Jason told officers that he put the kids to bed and then went to the basement to sleep because he and Brandy were no longer sleeping in the same room because of their marital problems. So he had no idea what had gone on until he heard Brandy's mother screaming. When he heard the screams, he raced upstairs and confronted a horrific reality. He says that then, when he discovered his children, Brandy turned to him and said, "Now you can't take the kids away from me." The police arrived at their home around 4 a.m., where they found the dead bodies of 7-year-old Tyler and 3-year-old Charlie in Charlie's bedroom upstairs, and they had both been stabbed in the neck multiple times. A bloody knife was also found near their bodies, and everyone on the scene was just shocked. I mean, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. When the police arrived, they found Brandy lying on the couch in the living room, bleeding from her stab wound. Officers who spoke to Brandy said that she didn't seem the least bit remorseful and was acting very matter-of-fact.
Good evening, I'm Jeff Smith. Thanks for joining us. 2 Montgomery County children are dead tonight. Their mother, 30-year-old Brandy Worley, says she is responsible for their deaths. News 18's Krista Henry joins us live from the Montgomery County Courthouse tonight with more on this developing story. Krista?
Well, Jeff, this morning when I asked Sheriff Mark Castile if Worley showed any kind of remorse, he answered with no, and then went on to say, quote, she, in fact, acted very matter-of-fact.
That night, Brandy was taken to the hospital to be treated for her stab wounds, but luckily she survived because her injuries were pretty minor, so she was going to face justice for what she had done. Right after she was well enough and had recovered from her stab wound, which was about 1 week after the murders, she was booked right into jail and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. She was very forthcoming about the whole thing, and she explained that when Jason told her that he had officially filed for divorce that day, she started planning out what she was going to do. So later that evening, she went to Walmart and purchased a combat knife. She then waited for Jason and the kids to go to sleep and then snuck into Charlie's room where both kids were sleeping that night and stabbed them to death. And she did all of this because she didn't want Jason to get custody of their kids in the divorce.
Following breaking news right now, chilling details released in court documents tonight about the murders of a young brother and sister in Montgomery County. The children's mother admitting to police she stabbed her 7-year-old son and 3-year-old daughter. RTV6's Mike Pelton is live at the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department in Crawfordsville with the breaking details there. Mike.
Well, Jason, prosecutors late this afternoon filed 2 counts of murder, 2 charges against Brandy Worley in the death of her 2 kids. And in court documents just released late this afternoon, it shows the apparent motive was the fear of losing her kids and a pending divorce.
This heinous crime shook the entire Darlington community. The effects of what Brandy did were felt just throughout the community as friends, family, and neighbors grappled with the horrific reality of 2 young lives taken way too soon. The Montgomery County Sheriff gave an emotional press conference the day after the murders.
The Montgomery County Coroner has informed me he has scheduled autopsies for both children tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Our detectives are still in the process of interviewing witnesses in this case, and a detective will be attempting to interview Brandy Worley as soon as her medical condition allows. I can't imagine the pain and the grief that these families are experiencing this morning. Please keep these families in your thoughts and prayers.
The entire community was just haunted by this, and as you can see from that press conference, the horrific details of the case was almost too much for even the police to handle. People were just in disbelief, and many members of the community came forward and said that there were no signs that Brandy was going to do something like this, and never in a million years would they have thought that the loving mother they thought they knew would do this to her children. In response to the tragedy, the Darlington community showed an outpouring amount of support and sympathy for Jason and the rest of the family. They just went above and beyond to help Jason and ended up starting a GoFundMe to help with some of the funeral costs, which ended up raising about $50,000. A few days after the murders had taken place, the Worley family released a statement thanking the community for their support.
The Worley family also releasing this statement tonight. It says, "We are shocked and saddened by the sudden loss of our beloved Tyler and Charlie. They meant the world to our family, and words cannot describe our feelings of devastation. We are thankful for the outpouring of support from friends, family, and the community. We will grieve forever the loss of our precious little boy and girl."
Tyler and Charlie were laid to rest at the Green Lawn Cemetery in Darlington. Hundreds of people from the community came to their funeral to pay their respects to the two beautiful children. As for Brandy, as I mentioned before, she was charged with 2 felony counts of murder. Initially, she entered a plea of not guilty and was intending to pursue the insanity defense. As part of the legal process, she was ordered to undergo a psychiatric evaluation and then return to court for a competency hearing the following year. However, before this hearing could take place, Brandy actually changed her plea and pled guilty to the murder of her children, which was obviously a huge relief to everybody involved, so they didn't have to go through a long and painful trial. Throughout her various hearings and the whole legal process, Brandy remained in a very emotionless state, and this was later attributed to a diagnosis of depression. But regardless, it definitely doesn't lessen the gravity of her crimes. At her sentencing, the judge expressed his thoughts of the senselessness of this crime and said that sometimes there is no explanation for such a horrific act. Ultimately, Brandy was sentenced to 120 years in prison in March of 2018. She received 55 years for Tyler's murder and 65 for Charlie's murder. This lengthy sentence was a relief for Jason because it ensures that she is held accountable for what she had done. And he was actually happy that she didn't receive the death penalty because he says that that's what she would have wanted. At her sentencing, Brandy was given the opportunity to speak, but she refused to do so.
Montgomery County children killed over a pending divorce. Today, their mother, Brandy Worley, sentenced for a chilling crime that horrified central Indiana. Rafael Sanchez reported from Darlington on the day of the murders, and today brings us the outcome of this case. Rafael.
Erica, good evening. Brandy Worley shocked her family and her neighbors by stabbing to death her 2 young kids. Today was another tough day for the people of Darlington.
Brandy Worley was sentenced to 120 years for the deaths of her children, 7-year-old Tyler and 3-year-old Charlie.
For various reasons, it wasn't a death penalty case, and it made it easier to resolve. So I can't say that the sentence is unfair. Just some things don't have an explanation.
Good behavior could cut Brandy's incarceration time in the big house, though it's what happened in her Darlington house that's difficult to forget.
There was a breakdown, a mental breakdown.
This past January, she pled guilty to the crime and avoided what would have been a painful trial in Montgomery County.
We love Charlie and Tyler. Everybody loved Charlie and Tyler. And we will continue loving them.
Unfortunately, this left Jason and the community without the one answer that they all wanted, which was why? Why resort to this? How could a mother who is supposed to protect and love her children murder them in cold blood? It just doesn't make any sense. How can someone kill their own flesh and blood and seemingly feel nothing afterwards? I don't think it can be explained, but I feel like this is a case of if I can't have them, no one can. I think she also wanted to leave her husband with the everlasting feeling that this was his fault, and she wanted him to forever feel guilty that he asked for a divorce, just like she did with blaming him for her affair. I think you just have to believe that she is a psychopath and she's just sick, and that's the only way that someone could do something like this. I think her silence at her sentencing further demonstrates that she doesn't even know why she did this. In the weeks shortly after the murders, Jason actually returned to Reddit with an update. He started out by thanking the community and then confirmed what everyone had feared was the tragic reality. I would like to give a heartfelt and sincere thank you for the advice and support I received here. No one could have foreseen the tragedy that resulted from me filing for divorce. You guys perform a wonderful service to those in need, and I hope you continue to do so in the future. Then, after Brandy's sentencing in 2018, Jason returned to Reddit with a final update. He explained how he was coping and said that he's doing better now, but he had struggled with alcoholism and had thoughts of taking his own life because he missed his children so much. He says he was hospitalized for this, but luckily his family helped him get through it. He says he was able to get his life back under control and eventually return back to work and is working full-time now. Something else that I find pretty interesting that he mentioned in this post is that his ex-in-laws, so Brandy's family, created lots of problems for him after the murders. He explained that they actually started a legal battle with him over a property dispute and that they continued to make it difficult for him to visit his kids' graves, which is just appalling. He ended his final post with this. If I can impart on something I have learned through all of this, it is that you should always take the time to be with the ones you love. It doesn't matter if they're asking you to read The Pokey Little Puppy for the millionth time or asking you to play Smash Bros even though you both know they'll wipe the floor with you every time. Just do it because you never know what time will be the last time. Always make sure you know how much you love them. I had the fortune that the last thing my children ever heard me say was, "I love you. Good night, I will see you in the morning." That's where I'm gonna end this one off today, guys. This was a really heavy one, and I find it incredibly heartbreaking, and I'm sure you all do too. Please let me know what you guys think of this case in the comment section below, and I will see you next time.